I'm Philippa, CEO of Paradigm Norton, and this is Life Matters More, where we explore ESG, sustainability, and the future of business. Hello, and welcome to today's episode. I am thrilled to be joined by someone whose work is shaping how the legal profession approaches sustainability and long-term impact. Simon Colvin is a partner at Weightmans Solicitors, where he leads the environmental law team, heads up the energy and utilities sector, and leads the firm's ESG strategy. With a background in environmental biology and a track record of innovation, Simon has played a pivotal role in transforming Weightmans into one of the UK's leading ESG law firms. From securing top-tier sustainability accreditations to embedding ESG thinking across the client service, firm governance, and culture, Weightmans has achieved a platinum rating from EcoVadis, been nominated in 7 categories in the Legal 500 ESG Awards, and Simon himself has been named in the Legal 500 Green Ambassadors list. He's been described as sharp and insightful and going the extra mile. He is an engaging and thoughtful voice in the sector, someone who not only understands the technical and regulatory landscape, but is deeply committed to the why behind it all, helping organisations and professionals become better stewards of the world we live in. Simon, welcome. It is great to have you here. Now, you have been involved in environmental law for a very long time. What drew you into this area and what led to you becoming the ESG lead at Weightmans?
So thank you for the introduction, Philippa. I'm not sure I was looking for the blush emoji or response in terms of the podcast, but it's not there. But yeah, look, great to have the opportunity to chat to you today. So where did it all begin for me? How did I get into this? Crikey, I think my first experience of the environment, or one that I can remember, was when I must have been about 7 or 8, and I was a kid, and we spent a lot of our summer holidays down on the south coast. And I used to go on a bike ride with my sisters, and it's only a short story. I promise I won't take too long. But I suppose the government announced they wanted to build a bypass that cut straight across the bike ride that we used to do whenever we were down there. And so I decided I'd write to the Secretary of State for the Environment saying, this is terrible. Your bypass is going to cut across my bike ride. Please, can you can you change the route of your bypass? Now, unsurprisingly, he didn't. The Secretary of State at the time didn't say yes, but I got a letter back just explaining what they were doing. So I think for me, that's my earliest memory. So I've always been quite passionate about the environment. It's always meant a lot to me. And yeah, I suppose I just followed that passion through my studies, school, then university. And that was back sort of late 90s, and at that time environmental law was becoming a thing. And so I saw the opportunity to sidestep from sort of studying the environment into doing environmental law, and that was, crikey, 25 years ago nearly, which sounds like a long time. So yeah, not looked back since then. Be very fortunate to have some very supportive people at the different law firms that I've worked at. Worked in some really good teams with some very good clients on some really interesting projects. Picked up some great experience along the way. Loved every minute of it. It's been really good, and very fortunate now to be in the position that I'm in, doing some really good work with some really good people, both internally and externally. So yeah, we're very fortunate.
Did you straight into environmental law, or did you work in a different area of law when you first went into
So I
legal
knew,
sector?
I kind of knew on becoming a lawyer. So I did an environmental biology degree at university, a 4-year course, and then did a law conversion program. But I knew in becoming a lawyer that I wanted to do environmental law. That was my reason for going into it. And so as part of your training back then, I think you had to do 4 6-month seats as part of your training. But in each of those seats, I said I'd like to do as much environment work as I can. The firm I was with at the time were quite good in giving me that exposure. And then I used that experience to kind of sort of step up each time. I sort of moved firms to join better teams to get better experience. So no, that's always been sort of my focus and my goal. I've never, some people did, they became a corporate lawyer and then went into environmental law or a real estate lawyer and then got into it. But I've always been fortunate enough to say, no, actually, I just want to do pure environmental law, and I've been able to pursue that.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. So we will come on shortly to the work that you're doing with clients when you are on the ground, but I'm quite interested in understanding a little bit more about what an ESG lead does. What does that day-to-day role look like in your law firm?
Yeah, I suppose I talk about sort of a tale of two halves. I think it's about what we're doing as a business and what we're doing as a firm. It's always been really, really important to me that um, if you're going to support clients with their environmental needs, their sustainability needs, their ESG needs, that actually you're credible yourself as a business. And I suppose it's only while I've been at Weightmans that I've really been able to influence our direction of travel, because I've been a partner since I joined, and on joining the firm I was given the responsibility initially for the firm's what I call agricultural environment group, which was a bit of sort of paper use and travel, like many professional services businesses were at that point in time. So for me it's split between the focus on the internal and what are we doing as a firm, and then the other half of the story of the tale is really about how we can support clients with their needs. And that's a sort of a constantly sort of shifting and evolving picture, dictated by regulatory requirements in the UK, EU sort of global context, dictated by a client sort of customer expectations, stakeholder expectations, dictated by the sector or the segment that the client works in, dictated by their regulators and the frameworks they're subject to. So there's I suppose it's a very dynamic space to be in, constantly changing, constantly evolving. But it's really that tale of two halves. So I'll probably split my time equally between what we're doing as a firm, because that's really important. And I've got, I'm fortunate to have the ability to have a big influence in terms of what we do there, but then equally supporting our clients with their needs as well.
So sticking with the firm for the
Hmm.
moment, when you took over, when you were brought in, and presumably one of the reasons you were brought in was because you had this skill set and you had this desire and this passion. What what did you first when you first saw what the ESG offering was and how Wakeman's was approaching ESG, what was the sort of first thought that you had around, okay, this is the first thing we need to change?
I suppose it was we can do better, if I'm honest. Like
Mm,
we're very similar to. Well, then we were very similar to a lot of businesses, and we're still similar to a lot of businesses in that you very rarely find a business or organisation that isn't doing anything in an environmental context. Everybody will have something that they're doing. There'll be some threads there, and so for me, it was about identifying the good work that we were doing, and then trying to bring that together, put some structure around it. That sort of governance approach. Um, and so for us initially, it was saying, well, okay, let's formulate the environment activities we've got going on into an environmental management system, because I had experience of supporting clients with their programs. I knew that we could do the same. So, the early stages was about creating a management system, and then getting that management system accredited through the ISO 14001 program, because that enables you to benchmark where you're at, put some structure and governance around it, and then set some goals and targets in terms of improvement. So we did that in an environmental context, and then because of the size of business we are, we're subject to certain regulatory controls in terms of there's the energy saving opportunities scheme, which looks at you have to do an audit every 4 years of your business and your sites and look at how you can improve energy performance. And there's an easy way to compliance with that is through having ISO 50001. So it was quite a simple step for us to sort of do that. So we got 50001. And then I suppose it's just the recognition that as a professional services business in an environmental context, we're quite boring in a way. Um, we are, we don't make things, we don't, sort of do a huge amount. So we're relatively light touch compared to a lot of organisations. And one of the great things about Weightmans is that we've always had a very strong culture. We've always had a very strong CSR program. And I suppose it's that natural evolution and that morphing of environment, sustainability, ESG kind of brings all of that together. And so
mm,
my thinking was actually we've got all the constituent parts here of a great program that we just need to bring together. And it was saying, well, actually, again, thinking about some sort of external framework that we could use or adopt to put some structure to that bigger sort of bucket of stuff that we were doing. And so we looked at the Sustainable Development Goals at the time and offered a really nice opportunity for us to take that next step. So yeah, those that was sort of the journey. So I joined Weightmans in, I think it was November 2013, and then we got our EMS up and running in sort of 2014, 15. Then we looked at, I think, ISO accreditation sort of 16, 17, and have kind of accelerated our journey from that point. point.
Gosh, that's a really nice sort of stepping stone as you
Yeah.
go through. Was that? I mean, did you have any difficulty in taking anyone with you? I mean, I worked in a law firm for 20 years, and there are all sorts of people who are, more passionate than others when it comes to things like that. Did you? Was there a sort of a diverse set of opinions around how much energy should be put into this sort of thing?
Yeah, I think there was. I think there's a number of factors at play. I think I said, Weightmans has always had a strong culture, a very strong CSR program. But I think there's always a bit of a nervousness around these sorts of programs in that, why are we doing it? What's the reason? Are we just doing it for the sake of it? Are we doing it because it's the right thing? Well, why is it the right thing? Is it the right thing for our people? Is it the right thing for us as a business and our other stakeholders, our clients? So I suppose the best explanation is to say there was an education process that had to be
Mhm.
gone through with primarily the senior leadership team, the board of the firm, to get them to understand that the why this was a good thing to do, and that's just time, to be honest. It's just conversations with people. It's getting them to see the benefits, the value. I suppose one of the early key supporters of the program was our former senior partner, a guy called David Lewis, who brought me into the firm. And David was a real advocate of all of this, and was initially through our governance structure, our link into the board, and so gave us a lot of sort of airtime with the board to talk about these things. And then as part of my development program within the firm, we have a sort of a partnership development program, so I participated in that, and one of the things that I pushed was for sort of my group and my project, if you like, as part of that program, to look at sustainability and actually how we could kind of accelerate the firm and move the firm forwards. So I suppose I've tried to grab every opportunity to push and promote it. You've got to be careful, because you think about that spectrum of sort of acceptance of what we're talking about, and you go from people who sort of die hard sustainability to people who are very skeptical. It's understanding where people are on that and making sure that, I suppose, the way you articulate the reasons for doing it speak to everybody on that spectrum, and everybody understands the reasons. So even if you've got somebody that's a complete, I don't know, climate skeptic, and hopefully there's not too many of those around anymore, but there's somebody in that space, they can still see the value in having a strong program, because it's not just about one particular thing. It's multiple things that will bring multiple benefits to multiple people.
Yeah, and do your clients, do they care? Do they care that you're putting all this work in, or is it more about how your people feel, or just that it's, do you know what, it's just an important thing to do?
Yeah, I suppose so. Our clients are in lots of different areas. So as a firm, we're quite diverse in terms of the clients we support. Public and private sector, um, and we do see a mix of interest in terms of this as a topic or a theme, and what we're doing. So I suppose from a procurement point of view, you see public sector leading the way. And so, examples would be universities or some of the NHS trusts we support, and their procurement exercises. They're awarding now anywhere between 10 and 20% of marks in tender exercises for your sustainability or ESG program. So actually, there's a real direct benefit to us through those processes of having a strong program. In a private sector context, again, we see a mix. Some people, it is more of a tick box exercise. I won't name any names, but some people it's a sort of a tick in the box. Can you do this? Great. Okay, fine. Let's move on. Whereas others, it's much more core and sort of key to their business, and they want to work with a firm that has its own program, is doing its own sort of good things, because we're part of their supply chain. We might come on to talk about that more later, but we know supply chain is very important.
Mm.
But then equally, in terms of our knowledge and expertise that we can add to those businesses, in terms of not only our own journey, but what we're doing with other clients too.
Yeah.
People are increasingly seeking to procure dedicated sustainability and ESG support, as it becomes more of a thing for businesses, and more specialist support is required. So yeah, we do see a complete mix, and in different ways, but it's something now that I think is on everybody's radar, to be honest.
Yeah, and where is that coming from? Um, is that people who are genuinely coming to you saying, Simon, Weightmans, I want to do better, or are they coming to you with an issue of, so we want to get this accreditation and we need to sort out our supply chains, for example? What is the driver when they come to you in particular to work with you and the environmental team?
So I suppose I'll take a little bit of a step back in that I think the services that we offer are slightly different to your typical law firm. I think law firms typically historically have been problem solvers, sort of
Mm.
issue resolvers. So a client comes to you and says, I've got this particular problem. I need your help solving this problem. What we've seen very much in the ESG sustainability space is the client comes to you and actually, I suppose you could still say it's an issue or a problem, but it's much more holistic. It's about the business. It's not one thing. From a compliance perspective, it's much more around, in an ESG sustainability context, we know we need to do something, but we don't know what we need to do and we don't know how to
Right.
start with it. And so please help us. So we get an awful lot of those sorts of inquiries. So a colleague and I were on a call yesterday with some fund managers having exactly that conversation around, they recognise they need to do something. They know as a business they've got some good activities going on in different sort of pots across their organisation, but they don't quite know how to bring it all together, package it up, and then articulate it. So you have a number of businesses that are in that space, and typically they will be ones that are, I suppose, slightly smaller, less sophisticated. They don't have the size or scale, and they will come and say, we need help on our journey, we need to put that framework in place. You then tend to find you have the larger organisations that maybe have their own teams in place. So they might have a chief sustainability officer or somebody with a similar title, and maybe a few people working with them. They've got their program buttoned down, and they're more sophisticated, they're more evolved, and actually they're looking at a particular issue or challenge. So an example of that would be a client that we've been supporting with a project looking at human rights compliance across all of their manufacturing sites. So they're a global business. They've got 300 plus manufacturing sites globally. They support some very large sort of global corporates, and the challenge for them is how do they demonstrate human rights compliance at their manufacturing sites to their clients, their customers. And so they've been looking at a specific sort of global standard that puts in place a process that enables them to undertake audits and say, well, we achieve that standard, we're audited to that standard, therefore you can have trust and you have faith in our activities in terms of not abusing anybody's human rights. There's no modern slavery in anything that we do. So supporting a client with that, so that's very specific, isn't it? So we have the general, we have, how do we start with this? What are the building blocks? Please help, to very specific, compliance type questions to deal with particular challenges.
And are you seeing, it's interesting because I don't know how much ESG is really being embedded across the whole of the UK. I think, as you say, there's that whole spectrum where there are some people who are super passionate about it, and it's interesting what you were saying earlier about your senior partner when you arrived, and he was the person that opened the doors. He was the kind of influencer and advocate for you. I mean, are you seeing a shift? I mean, both ways, considering the Trump administration. Are you seeing a shift in how seriously businesses or boards are taking ESG issues, maybe over the last 5 years? I mean, I don't think you're running out of work.
um, are we seeing? So I suppose you do see. I suppose the terminology we use is you see people sort of dialing up and dialing down
Hmm.
what they're doing. But if I'm honest, that tends to be dialing up or dialing down what they're saying publicly about what they're
Right.
doing, kind of almost sort of reflecting what's going on in the marketplace. So we do act for a number of sort of US corporations, and how they articulate what they're doing publicly has definitely been dialed down with the Trump administration. But that's not to say behind the scenes they've slowed the pace of what they're doing. And the reasoning for that, Philippa, is because I think we had a conversation with a client about this yesterday, is that when I think you reach a point in your sustainability or ESG journey that you realize that actually a lot of this is just about good business practice, and it's about risk management, and it's about identifying opportunities for your business, and whether that's winning new work or managing costs, whatever it might be. it just makes good business sense. And so actually, if you adopt this framework, which in a way is becoming a bit of a common approach across a number of businesses and organizations, you're approaching risk and opportunity in a similar way to others. And that's kind of, downsides to that I accept, but more often not a good way of operating. And so when you come to accept that, no matter what the sort of macroeconomic considerations are, if you want to be a responsible business and run your business in a good way to manage risk and identify opportunities, you keep going with it. You don't stop because there's a new sort of political administration in one jurisdiction. You keep going because actually that's going to make you a strong, resilient business in terms of what you're doing. An example of that would be around climate change. Crikey, you've only got to look outside sort of the window at the moment to see the real-time impacts of that. Would you just stop how you're going to adapt your business to climate change because you've got a different administration, or do you say actually this is sort of a macro global economic sort of physical change that we need to be ready for? Of course you do. So you get on and be ready for that, and you don't dial up or dial it down. So yeah, I think behind the scenes businesses are just getting on with this because they need to. They have no choice. But publicly, in terms of how they label it or what they say about they're doing, I think you might see that changing depending on what, where, when, who, how.
Yeah, I was at the Legal 500 ESG summit a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about green hushing, exactly what you're talking about there. The other phrase they came out with, I'd never heard before, was green wishing. I don't know if you've come across that, where people say, "Oh, by this date we will have done this thing," and sort of the rules and regulations that might be coming in around green wishing, which I thought was an interesting phrase. So, but you sort of talk then about dialing up, dialing down, the climatic changes, the political changes. The language around ESG and sustainability it just evolves all the time, and you live in this space. For the listeners who don't necessarily live in the sustainability ESG space, how do you make sense of what is signal, what is noise, what you should be paying attention to? There are shades of green. There are differing opinions on how you go about, being green or whatever. People have opinions about this stuff. You can't start a conversation on sustainability or ESG without somebody coming out with something that I actually find quite surprising sometimes. That how do you make sense of all of that noise?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things I'd say. The term sustainability has been around for a long time. ESG is more of a recent phenomenon. But my gut feel is that ESG might pass as a term or a phrase. We might be talking about something different in 5 years' time, but sustainability will always be there as the backbone of this. I don't think that's going to go away. So I think ESG might morph into something else. We'll see. In terms of a business, how do you sort of cut through what's noise and what's real? I suppose one of the things we always advocate with clients is to do what we'll call a materiality assessment. And clients typically do that when they're starting on their ESG journey to work out what the themes or topics are of most importance to them as an organization or a business. And so actually once you identify those, it kind of doesn't really matter what the current thing is. If you've actually got your plan and you know what matters to you as a business, you stick to your plan. Now there might be things that go on under each of those topics, themes or headings that you've picked or chosen, but typically you can kind of see those coming over the horizon. You know what they're going to be. So I think for me it's about having your own plan and working to the plan. And what you tend to find is that people will revisit that materiality assessment maybe on an annual or biannual basis. And so actually you're continually refreshing what it is that you want to do and being clear about what you want to do. And that's typically influenced by, come back to your stakeholders. It's your people. So what matters to them, what's important, and your customers, your clients, what matters to them and what are the areas of regulatory focus. And, you're generally going to have some informed people or professionals supporting you with that process, the materiality assessment. So it's going to be an informed process. So you're automatically trying to sort of start to cut through some of that noise. You're using the recognized framework that you've adopted. So is it the SDGs? Okay. So again, you're cutting out a bit more noise and you're coming back to what really matters. I think that's the point. So there's always going to be a lot of stuff going on. There's going to be a lot of sort of chat and conversation around the latest thing, the newest thing. But actually, if you bring it all back to what matters to you as a business, a recognized framework, a process that sort of focuses on those two things, I don't think you can go far wrong with this.
So helpful. That's so helpful. So when you're sat down with your clients and maybe they're worried about scrutiny around greenwashing, and I guess it's maybe where the supply chain conversation comes in. Like, how do you help clients from that perspective?
Yeah, I think so. We I suppose we've had the experience of working with some clients that've got it wrong, or they've had competitors that've got it wrong. Um, and so we kind of got the t-shirt in terms of what
Yeah.
greenwashing looks like, and we can tell stories about, sort of good and bad practice and bring it to life and get people to see how easy it is to get it wrong, but then actually talk about, what a very simple process or structure looks like to get it right. Um, and I suppose that comes back to my thing around, that typical sort of law firm approach. Is typically lawyers get called in when something's gone wrong. So, gosh, we've said something we shouldn't have done. Advertising Standards Agency are knocking at our door, or Competition Markets Authority are banging down the door. What do we do? There's actually a lot of preventative stuff you can do in this space, and it comes back to the education point. So, what is greenwashing to start with? What are some common examples of it? How do people get it wrong? Okay, if that's how you get it wrong, how do you get it right? And
Mhm.
talk a lot about ES and governance. There's some really simple governance stuff you can put in place around greenwashing, training being part of that, but then a process or a procedure for people to follow in terms of what you do and don't say and how you say it, and almost a sort of a key focal point, or if you like, sort of valve through which things are released from a business. So somebody has the ultimate say in terms of what goes out. So you've kind of got a sense check of what a business is
Mhm.
putting out into the marketplace. So it's just some really, again, good business practice sort of concepts and ideas you can put in place to manage these risks. And it'll work for other things. It's not just about what you say in a sustainability context, but once you've got that structure in place, it will undoubtedly help. But yeah, it's just knowledge and understanding. Because I think the thing is, Philippa, I keep coming back to this point. Businesses will be doing some really good stuff in this space, and they're really keen to talk about it because they're proud of what they've done, and there's lots of benefits that can come. And I think sometimes you rarely find people saying things intentionally trying to mislead a market or mislead their clients or customers, but um, sometimes that happens because of the way it's said or portrayed, and people don't quite appreciate how it can be perceived by others. So if you have a bit of training and development around that and recognize I suppose what the context of that envelope is in terms of putting information out there, then you can, more times than not, avoid making those mistakes and tell those good stories, and and win business and clients and customers as a result.
Yeah. I suppose what intrigues me is the balance between I love what you're saying about it just makes good business sense. That most of this is just about good business sense. It's about future proofing businesses. It's about understanding what's going on around what your people and what your clients want. But you balance that up with the cost of some of the sustainability or ESG initiatives that in a perfect world lots of people would be doing. I mean, with that in mind, what are the sort of common ESG challenges that you're dealing with from your client's perspective, and how does that balancing act between being a force for good and also making a profit? How does that sort of manifest itself for your clients?
Yeah, I think that the two earliest biggest challenges that a lot of businesses face is knowledge and expertise,
Mm.
and time. So knowledge and expertise in the sense that when you first look at this, it can be off-putting because it seems like it's such a big thing. And actually, how do we break into it? As an organisation, how do we make a start? Um, and so we've had some conversations with the CBI around this, because actually, when you look at you know how are you going to change sort of the UK economy and get it into a better state from a sustainability point of view? Yeah, you've got lots of these blue chips doing good things, and those big companies, but they aren't the majority of companies in the UK economy. You've got so many SMEs and owner managed businesses, and they're the ones that really need to engage, and they're the
Mm.
ones that typically have this challenge around knowledge and expertise and time. And so, how do you then help those people? And for me, it's about simplifying what this means. And so, if that's always been the key thing, make it very, very simple. Um, in terms of the key focus areas of the process that I've talked to you about. A bit of training and development, quickly work out what's relevant to you, and kind of work your way through that process. But time is also the thing. Again, with the majority of those businesses, you find people are time poor because typically they're wearing lots of hats and they're trying to do lots of things, and it's really hard to sort of squeeze this in. And again, one of the things we really advocate is this is not about creating something new and adding to somebody's workload. This is about some knowledge and education, identifying the good things that you will already be doing as a business, drawing those threads together, and then sort of pulling that together into an action plan together with your focus areas, and then just being able to articulate that. So it's really about knowledge education, sort of activity identification, if I can call it that, in terms of current activities, and almost that sort of baselining exercise and saying, okay, well, in terms of what we're doing at the moment, then how do we get better? We see it as a business ourselves. One of the big things we're looking at is we've got 1,600 people. How do you educate all of those people in terms of this as a theme or a topic? It's relevant to us as a business. It's relevant to people as clients. We've not gone out and created a whole new ESG training and development framework for our business. We've gone to our learning and development team and said, okay, what programs do you have in place for our people? And actually, can we introduce this as part of that? So it's not new, it's just building on top of what you've got and facilitating, and using what's already there. So I think it's just trying to be slightly smart about it, to be honest. Not shiny and new, not lots of time, not lots of money. Just do it in a sensible way, but in a smart way, to try and cut some corners, to be honest, to accelerate your journey.
Yeah, I think there can be a sense, can't there, when you're looking at this sort of sector, that perfection must be the answer. That if you don't do it very well, then there's some sort of greenwashing or something terrible happening. And they don't say that about other things. Actually, it does seem to be around this green agenda where people say, well, if you take a flight and you work in ESG, then you're not really serious about it. And so I love the fact that you're sort of talking about, what are we doing? How do we do it better? How do we just do it slightly better? I think that's really helpful.
Just on that, Philip, sorry to cut across you. I mean, the other thing I was going to say is, that what I've talked about there in terms of education and time kind of works for people at probably, the early stages of their journey, trying to get started. Don't get me wrong, as you become more sophisticated and your program becomes more evolved, you will start to come up against things such as, okay, well, we've taken this message, we've taken this story so far, what's our next step? What do we do next with this? Do we want to look at some sort of accreditation for our business, for our journey? Is it something around ISO with an environmental focus? Is it something around social with an ISO focus? Is it, a B Corp type approach? Is it EcoVadis, which we've talked about before? Those things do come with a price tag, and I think it's important that people appreciate that. And it's really trying to understand, to be clear of the benefits that's going to bring to the business. I'd never advocate doing something just to get the badge. That's not a good approach. That's kind of that tick box. You've got to do something for a reason, and it's actually going to enhance and accelerate your journey and bring value to you as a business in terms of what you're doing, either risk management or value sort of proposition.
But when you came in, and Weightmans has some of these accreditations. You have some of the ISO ones, I know, and you have an EcoVadis rating, as you say. What's that brought? What's that brought to you, and how hard was it to get those accreditations and to maintain those accreditations? What difference does it make to you?
So in terms of getting, and then maintaining, so getting's the sort of the more challenging thing, because when you do something for the first time, it's never easy, is it? You've got to sort of look at how you gather and maintain data, and then report in relation to those things, and how you then accommodate the audits that are associated with those processes. But once you've been through that cycle or process a number of times, you become accustomed to it. And we've talked about not creating something new. As a firm, we've got ISO accreditations to do with information security and other standards. So it's become one of our suite of standards that we participate in. Over time, we've developed some tech tools that we use for audit and compliance purposes. We now use those with clients as well. So it's that we've been able to test and do things ourselves, and then we sort of cross-sell that to our clients, because we can say, well, look, it works here. It's worked really well. You should look at this. So we've got clients that have benefited from that sort of learning and development that we've had. And then I suppose how do you getting and then maintaining? Well, once they're in place and they're embedded, just becomes a question of having that process to deliver the information. So I talked about the technology. There are some that have a cost associated, a significant cost associated with them, and I think you have to weigh out the benefits of doing that. For us, some of it is it's either part of our own ambition, and we want to be able to demonstrate to the outside world that actually, the target, for example, that we've set in terms of carbon emissions is to the SBTI standard, so the Science Based Targets Initiative standard, which says a lot to a number of organisations in terms of how serious you are about what you're doing, and actually it's been externally validated. With EcoVadis, we initially went through that process because it was client driven. So a client said to us, if you want to be on our panel, we need you to participate in this process. And to begin with, it was quite painful because it's really far reaching and an in-depth review. But actually now, that's completely flipped on its head. We've achieved a platinum standard. We're being re-audited this year, and we're hopeful we'll maintain that. But we've got clients going through that process now, and we're supporting them with their EcoVadis assessments. So, that's great, isn't it? Because actually we can say to client, well, our experience was this. People want to know because they're going through it for the first time. They want to get better. So you can support them with their journeys too. So there's a lot of benefits that come from having sort of been around that loop ourselves and then supporting our clients with what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, we're the same with the B Corp. We went through the B Corp accreditation, and we maintain that now, and it is a joy actually to be able to talk to other firms who are thinking about it. And yes, being able to say it was hard but worthwhile. So measuring ESG, I think, is a tough one. It's a bit like your employee engagement survey. How do you actually measure something which is so it doesn't have a number particularly associated with it? So how do you sort of measure success in your ESG work?
So I think one of the earliest things we looked at was, what's our ambition in this space? What do we want to do? Where do we want to be? And so, we had a lot of discussion and debate, but arrived internally at this ambition to be one of the UK's most socially and environmentally conscious law firms, which, some people might say that's a bit vague, but I think it's quite a nice place to be, because it's not saying we're going to be the best. Because how do you demonstrate that? We want to be one of the best. We'd like to be up there in that leading group of people, doing good work ourselves and supporting others with what they're doing. Okay, so how do you kind of reflect on whether or not you've achieved that status? And I think, again, there's two sides to this. So one is I've talked about that process of materiality assessment, action plan, focus areas. We've got our own internal plan that we're working on as a business. And we will continue to work to that, and that has KPIs within it, metrics. We have board objectives connected to it. So, out of all of those things, on an annual basis, we can look and see the progress that we've made in terms of our target areas. So that's quite structured, and that's data-based. But that's us internally. You then talk about and look at almost the external recognition for what you're doing, and there are lots of different, I suppose, call them indicators to kind of show how you're doing in this space. So I think the lawyer earlier this year, late last year, ranked us second in the top 75 UK law firms in terms of our carbon emissions. So that's somebody externally looking at what we're doing, saying this is where you sit in relation to your peers. It's not us saying that. EcoVadis have put us in the top 1% of professional services companies globally with that platinum award. Well, that's somebody else saying that. That's not us saying it. We're a top 10 UK top 100 employer and have been for a number of years. I think we're top 5 this time. So that says a lot, because that's somebody else looking at what we're doing. So for us, it's at the moment, there's no one badge you can get which looks at everything, which incorporates everybody and says, this is where you sit. There's a number of different indicators, if I can call them that sort of kind of enable us to be comfortable and satisfied that we sit in that top bracket. That's not to say it's like, great, job done. That's it. We can all pack up and go home, we're in this great spot. Definitely not. We think we're in that space, and we want to work hard to stay in that space. We've got lots of exciting projects that we're working on as a business. We've got lots of exciting plans we're working on in terms of how we're supporting our clients. So it's just constantly trying to be at the forefront of what's going on, and sharing that knowledge and learning with others. We do. I've never been particularly sniffy about this. We work with other law firms and other sort of legal groups to help others, improve what they're doing, because I think that's a really important part of what we do. Sort of sharing that knowledge and learning and helping others on their journey. So yeah, no, I think we're in a good space, but we never rest on our laurels. We keep trying to get better.
So good to hear. So for those other professional services firms, and as you say, professional services firms sit in their own sort of area, don't they? They're not manufacturing, etc. So a professional services firm listening to this, there might be an accountant, there might be a law firm, there might be, I don't know, an architecture firm. What advice would you give to a professional services firm that is really wanting to take ESG seriously?
Give somebody the role or responsibility to lead. So make it part of somebody's sort of job profile or responsibility. Empower somebody to do something about it, and then have just an initial 6 to 12 month plan, which is about some learning development for that individual, but then also for the business. And this is if you're sort of the really early stages. And if you need to tap into external support to do that, there's lots out there. If you're a law firm, Legal Sustainability Alliance, Law Society, lots of good resources. World of Accounting has the same thing. We did a lot of work with insurance brokers. So BIBA, British Insurance Broking Association, they've got a lot of free stuff that's available to their members. So wherever you sit, in whatever sort of realm you're in, your industry association or regulator will have resources you can use to help educate yourself. So that'd be the really easy thing. And then you get into what I've talked about, which is about, okay, some education upskilling for your senior leadership team, a bit of analysis of what we're doing as a business at the moment. What would we like to do alongside that? Bingo, you've got your action plan, and kind of off you go. And if you need some help and support that with that externally, again, go to your industry association or just look at free external resources. Not talked about the role of AI and those sorts of things, but there's a lot of free stuff, is my point, about what you can do that you can tap into just to make a start with these things. So yeah, either go to industry associations or bodies to tap into their support, or just use tech to help you, get going with all of this.
Brilliant. And if there is one message that you want the listeners to take away from our conversation today, what would it be?
Don't bury your head in the sand. Don't put this in a too difficult drawer. Do something. Because, sure as eggs are eggs, people, once you make a start with this, it kind of just opens your eyes, and you just build momentum as a business. And it can be hugely empowering for an organization and people within that organization to get engaged in the topic, to start to sort of tell their story, and to start to uncover the opportunities for things they can do. Don't just see it as a tick box exercise. Don't just see it as a burden. There is true value in this, and just make a start. Do some of those easy things that I've talked about, and you won't regret it.
Brilliant. Simon, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a fantastic conversation. I have really enjoyed it, from sort of the evolving language of sustainability to the practical ways that firms like Weightmans are changing from the inside out. I've loved talking to you about what authentic ESG looks like. But what really stands out for me is your ability to connect the technical with the human. You're helping both clients and colleagues see that sustainability isn't a bolt-on, but it's something that belongs at the heart of any good business. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have, please do share it with a colleague or a friend who cares about the future of our professions and the role that we all play in making money a force for good. Until next time, keep asking good questions and keep doing good work. Thank you.
Thanks, Philippa.